Okay, so just like to welcome you all and thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Today we're going to look at ShareScope Gold, and in particular we're going to look at the charts within ShareScope Gold. Before I crack on and look at charts, one thing I would like to say, if you haven't watched the previous webinar, or you are looking for any kind of help with ShareScope Gold, you can always go to the help menu in ShareScope and you can find ShareScope Training Zone in the help menu. So if you click on the ShareScope Training Zone in the help menu, that will take you to our training zone on our website, on which you'll find over 40 articles and lots of videos, including my last webinar. Okay, so just click away from there. So here's a look at charts. And here I am, ShareScope Gold. This is how you would look once you've installed it. It's a very basic looking chart. What I'd like to do is just describe what we've got here on the screen. So we're looking at a chart that goes from July 1994 all the way to October 2014. So well over 20 years of data. We're looking at open, high, low, close bars. If we look at the top left of the chart, you'll see it says pounds 2-month bars, and in brackets DYN, and that DYN stands for dynamic. And what it's basically doing is saying, how many pixels have you got for me to show the chart in? How much data have you got to be displayed? So as I just said, over 20 years. And then ShareScope itself sits there and works out the optimum bar size so that you can still see clear open, high, low, close bars. But there's not too much space in them. They're not too big, they're not too small, they don't look too cramped, that sort of thing. In this case, it's decided 2-month bars is the optimum bar size, and so that's what it's displaying. A little bit later on, we'll look at how we change that and we fix that to a specific period, but that's what it's doing at the moment. If you look at the chart itself, we've got a blue horizontal line on the chart and 2 dotted blue lines as well. That is a trend line, also known as a linear regression line or a trend line, or a line of best fit, sorry. What it does is it looks at all the closing data on the chart and it tries to draw a straight line as close to all those closing points as it can whilst still remaining straight. The idea is it cuts out all of the noise and just shows you whether the particular share is trending up or trending down over the period shown on the chart. And then you have your confidence lines, and confidence lines are drawn a number of standard deviations above and below the chart. In this case, I think you'll find there 1.5 standard deviations above and below. And we'll look at those a little bit later on. In the background of my open, high, low, close bars, you'll see that I have a green wiggly line, hopefully. That's a moving average. It's actually a 20-period moving average. You can see this on the legend. The legend is this box up here in the top left of the chart. And you can see the green line is a 20-day simple moving average. And what I'll look at how to change the moving averages, how to set them up, change what period they are, change what type they are, that sort of thing a little bit later on. Down the right-hand side of the chart, we have a toolbar. Now this is what we call the graph bar and is specific to the graphs themselves. So in ShareScope Gold, when we view cycle, we'll see it actually disappears. So if I press enter view cycles, and what it does, it'll take me to the detail screen. There's the detail screen. You see the toolbar's gone. And if I press enter again, I'm to the table. You'll see there's no toolbar there until I come back to the chart, and then the toolbar's there. And all these buttons pertain to the graph, and we will look at some of them. I'm not sure if I will actually look at all of them today, but we'll look at most of them as we go through the afternoon. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually turn the legend off for now. I will come back to it a little bit later on, but for the moment, it's just a little bit in my way. So down the bottom right-hand corner here, I have show or hide the legend. So that's the first button we're looking at. So you can see it looks like a little legend box, hopefully. Just going to click that, which turns the legend off. So the first thing we notice about the chart is that we're looking at 20 years worth of data. And it's a bit too much data for my liking, and probably for anybody's liking, really. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to be able to reduce the amount of data I'm looking at. Now, one way I can do that, I can do that temporarily by zooming on the chart. To zoom on the chart, I put the mouse where I want to start zooming. Hold down the left mouse button, keep the left mouse button held down, select the data I want to zoom, and release. You get a did you know up, you can read that, but for the moment all I'm going to do is click on in future do not show this message, otherwise it will keep popping up, and I'll click on close. So there you go. So now I've got from the January 2010 to now. So I've zoomed in. I could zoom in again. So I could hold down the left mouse button, select the range of data I want to show, release, and I'll zoom in again. And now I'm my bar size dynamically. I basically don't want to do that, but as I said, we'll change that a little bit later on. But just to point out, that's what it's doing. The thing about zooming is temporary. If I change share, so if I press the space bar, I'm going to change share. As soon as I change share, it goes back to whatever the defaults are. In this case, it's programmed to show all of the available data we've got for this share. So for Aberdeen Asset Management, we're going all the way back to January 1994. I'll press space again. For Admiral Group, we don't have quite as much data. It only goes back to 2004. So it's just basically showing me all of the data for the share I'm looking at. What I want to do is I want to fix the amount of data it shows me. So when I press space, I'm always seeing the same amount of data. To do this, I need to enter the graph menu. Now to enter the graph menu, I can either click on graph at the top here, or I can just right click on the chart. And when I right click on the chart, near the middle of the menu, I have graph design, and just above graph design, you'll see limit date range. When we move the mouse over limit date range, you'll see we have set date range. So I'm going to go to set date range. Set date range opens up a dialog box in which I can set an amount of data I'm going to show on the chart, and I can also set a starting at date and an ending at date. Now they tend to confuse people and they can cause problems, so I always advise people don't set a starting at date or an ending at date unless you're doing it for an absolute reason. I see lots of people phone up, they set an ending at date and it's then causing problems with their chart because the chart won't update because it's gone past that date. So just ignore them basically, unless you're doing it for a reason. So in this case, I'm just going to show 6 months on my chart. So rather than 60 days, I'm going to change the 60 to 6. And rather than days, I'll change days to months. So now I've got 6 months. So what I need, click on OK. And there you go. Now I'm showing the data for the last 6 months. Now, when I press space, every share is going to show me data for the last 6 months. Most people, when they look at their charts, want to not only see the data they're seeing, but they'd like to see a portion of space on the right-hand side of their chart. So you can see at the moment, my open high low close bar is quite close to my right-hand axis. In fact, it's barely visible. And people like to see some space on the right-hand side of their charts. To do that, we use an option called Show Future. So I'm going to right-click on the chart. I'm going to select Show Future, which is just below Limit Date Range. Go to Show Future. And this time we're going to go to Show Future Settings. Now, by default, this is set to 3 months. If you imagine I just told the program to draw me 6 months worth of data, if I suddenly put 3 months worth of space, that 3 months will occupy a third of my chart, and that's way too much white space for my liking, so I'm going to reduce that. And I'm just going to make it a week, so I'm going to select weeks, click in where it says 3, change it to 1, click on OK, and there we go. So just to recap, if you want to set the amount of data you want to see on your chart, you right click, you go to limit date range, and then set date range. And if you want to show some future on your chart, again you right click, you go to show future, and then you go to show future settings. Okay, so at the moment I'm looking at a chart and it's open, high, low, close bars. ShareScope has many different ways of showing you the data shown on the charts, not just open, high, low, close bars. And the simplest way you can show the data is just as a close line. And if we look at the toolbar on the right hand side, you can see we've got this green and red zigzag line. And I move the mouse over it, it says display the close price line. I click on it, I get a very simple close line. Below that, I have the button for open, high, low, close bars, which we were just on. And below that, I have a button for candlesticks. Click on that, you can see I've got candlesticks. Now there are three options that have got toolbar buttons, but there are many other options as well. And the way we find those is we go into graph design. Now there are several ways of going into graph design. I can right click on the chart and you'll find graph design near the middle of the menu. You can also see from that the keyboard shortcut for graph design is Ctrl+D. And also, if I really want to, I can just click on the design button here on my bottom toolbar. And that's what I'm going to do. So just click on design there. When we go into graph design, the window's split into two halves. On the left-hand side, I have what we call a preview panel, which shows what my changes look like as I'm making them. And on the right-hand side, I have several tabs. And these tabs let me change different aspects of. We're on the price tab already. You can see it's highlighted in white. And at the top here, I have main graph. And I have clothesline, open, high, low, close bars, high, low, close bars, high, low bars, candlesticks. And then I've got lots of other options as well, like high, Kinashi, point and figure, three-line break, etc. So if you want to change the way your chart draws, this is where you do it. While we're in this dialog, at the moment, my candlesticks are showing black if they're rising or red if they're falling. Now, if a candlestick's rising, its close is higher than its open. If it's falling, its close is lower than its open. So when we look at colouring candlesticks for the simplest of options, we're going to look at the relationship between the close and the open. Personally, I like green rising candlesticks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the colour of my candlesticks so you get an idea of how you do it. In graph design on the right hand side here, you can see I've got an option labelled price colour. And at the moment the button's labelled close open. That's actually the option I want, which is useful. So I'm going to click on the button. And you can see I've got various options like single colour, which would just give me, for example, black candlesticks. Close relative to previous close, or close relative to open. And then there's various other volume related options as well. I'm going to leave mine on close relative to open. Now my up colour is black, my down colour is red, and my neutral colour, which is a candlestick which effectively doesn't have a body, is a dark green colour. I prefer my up to be green, so I'm going to click on this button, and what happens is it opens up the colour picker. The colour picker basically enables me to pick both the colour type and the line type. In this case with the candlesticks, the line type isn't so important for me at the moment, so I'm just going to choose green. But that green's a little bit bright for my liking, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ease it down, make it a little bit of a darker shade, using the slider on the right hand side here. And just click on OK. Down colour's red, absolutely fine with that. Neutral colour's the dark green colour. I'm going to click on that, and rather than be dark green, just going to make it black. Click on OK. So my up's green, down's red, neutral is black. Click on OK. And you can see on the preview panel, it shows us that we've got green rising candles, red falling candles. Unfortunately, it doesn't show me a neutral one. If I click on preview down here on the bottom, you can see there you go, I've got a black candle there. So basically a candle with no body is black. But you can also see that my rising candles are still hollow. They don't need to be hollow. There's an option right in the middle of graph design here that says fill rising candlesticks. And I can tick that. And I can click on OK. And there you go. So that's how you change the colour of your, whether it's your clothesline, your open, high, low, close bars, or your candlesticks, or whatever other way you've got of drawing your chart. You right click, go into graph design, and it's going to be this price colour button here that determines what the colours are. So a little bit earlier on, I was discussing the fact that my candles are set to dynamic, and I wanted to fix that. So again, we're going to go into graph design, click on the design button, and in graph design, on the time tab, the time tab here at the top, almost in the middle, you can see I've got the graph time period and I've got dynamic selection of scale selected. So in here, I can select 1 day, 2 days, I can select a week or a month if I like, but I can fix the candlestick or open, high, low, close bar size to whatever I want it to be fixed to. So in my case, I'm just going to fix it to 1 day. And I'm going to click on OK. A little bit earlier on, I was talking about the zooming. So we can zoom in and zoom into my chart, zoom into my chart. If I want to zoom out, I double click on the chart and it takes me back to whatever range of data I've got set. So in this case, it's taking me back to my 6 months. If I'm showing 6 months and I double click again, it takes me all the way out to show me all the data. And if I double click again, it'll take me back to 6 months. Just to reiterate that, if I zoom, zooms me in, double click, takes back to my 6 month limit date range option, double click again, takes me right the way out, double click again, takes me back to my 6 months, being the default. You can see when I double click to zoom out though, this becomes what looks a little bit like a clothesline because it's still using 1 day candles. It's not adjusting them dynamically like it was when we first opened up the program. And if I zoom in and zoom in, eventually it'll start drawing them as if they're candles. There you go. Because it starts to get the data is such that it can actually manage to draw them. Double click, go back to where we were. Okay, so looking at my chart, one of the things we have on our chart at the moment is this green line. This green line is a moving average. It's a 20 period simple moving average. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you now how you can either turn that on or you can change that to whatever period moving averages you'd like to have on your chart. Just like most other things in ShareScope, there are different ways of doing this. On the toolbar, the fourth button down on my toolbar, you can see it's got this nice curved red line on it, and a little dialog box. And when I move the mouse over, it says adjust the moving average settings. If I click that, it'll open up the moving average dialog. The other way I can do it is if I right click on the chart, moving average options right near the top of my menu. So I'm going to click on that now. When I open the moving average options, I get a window open labeled moving averages standard. And you can see I've got 4 moving averages, but I don't have very many options. There's 4 tick boxes beside simple, 4 tick boxes beside Bollinger Bands. I've then got some options of periods and some color options as well. If I wanted exponential moving averages, there appears to be no way to change this. If we look at the dialog box, in the bottom right hand corner of the dialog box, there's an advanced button. So I'm going to click on advanced, and this gives us a lot more options. So now I've got my 4 moving averages, each spaced out into a rectangular box. And what we have is a line for the moving average itself. And we have a line for what I would call the channels, which are Bollinger Bands or envelopes. And I'll talk about those a little bit later on, about 5 minutes or so. And then below that, we have a data source. Now, the data source determines the period size. So if I set up a 10 period simple moving average, it uses 10 days to work out the average point of the moving average. If I set it to weekly, each point on the moving average would be calculated using 10 weeks, and an average of the data would be made from there. Likewise, if I set monthly, it's the same thing. If I set graph time period, you'll see it says currently 1 day. What it does is it uses whatever bar size you have on your chart. So if my chart was set to weekly, it would use weekly. If my chart was set to monthly, it would use monthly. At the moment it's set to 1 day candles, it would use 1 day candles. So if you like your chart and your moving averages to change when you change your candles or your bar sizes on your chart, you have to set your moving averages and all your indicators to graph time period. I'm just going to leave this on daily. Click on OK. You can see here the 20 period simple moving average that's actually on the chart is turned on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 moving averages on the chart. So I'm going to tick the first one. And rather than simple, I'm just going to change this to exponential. The other most popular type of moving average that there is. There are many other options, weighted, triangular, variable, but a simple and exponential are by far and away the 2 most popular. It's quite a short period here. I think I'm going to use 15 on my first one. That's just a number I picked up off the top of my head. And I'm going to change my line color. At the moment it's colored red, but I'm using red for my candles. So rather than sort of cause any conflict, I'm going to use blue. And I'm also just going to make it a little bit thicker, just so it makes it clearer to see. So I've changed it to blue, made it a little bit thicker. Click on OK. So that's one moving average. And now I'm going to change to 20 as well. I'm going to make the 20 much longer. So again, I'm going to change this to exponential. And in this case, I'm going to make it 100. And rather than green, because I've used green already on my chart as well, I'm going to make this a purple color. Again, I'm going to make it slightly thicker. I'm going to click on OK. So I've got a blue moving average and a purple moving average. I've got 15 and 100. Click on OK. Now the reason I use 15 is quite a small and 100 is quite long is so that you can see the difference between the two. Moving averages, as the period gets higher, their movement gets lower. So a short period moving average, such as this 15, will move quite nicely with the price. So when the price peaks, the moving average will peak, and as the price drops, the moving average will drop. As it peaks here, you can see that the blue is peaking, etc. The longer the period gets, so in this case I've got my 100, the slower the moving average moves. You can see it's very slowly creeping up, and then it slowly turns down, and it's gradually moving down as the price moves down. And you can use sort of 250, 400 period moving averages, and they'll be much flatter and move much less frequently. If I double click on my chart now to take me out, you can see my moving averages moving over time. So you can see just how slow my long period moving average moves, moving up in a nice line there, whereas at the same time my 15 is moving up and down, moving up and down, moving up and down, moving up and down, much closer with the price. Double click again, take me back in. Just going to turn the legend back on. So if you remember, the button for the legend is just down the bottom here. I could click on that, or I can alternatively I can right click on the chart and I can click on legend. And you can just see at the bottom of legends, just to show you that it does actually show you what my moving averages are. So if you forget what moving averages you've got on, if you just turn on the legend, it usually does show you at the bottom of the legend. So I've got a 15-day exponential MA and a 100-day exponential MA. Turn that off again. So up here on the toolbar, we have the adjust the moving average settings button. So we can click that and turn that on. Just close that for a second. Just below that, you have two moving average toggle buttons, 1 and 2. If I click that, it just turns the moving average off and on. I click that, just turns it off and on. So if I wanted to turn them off, just to move them out of the way for a moment, I could turn them off, and I can click on both buttons and turn it back on again. It's just an easy way to do it. So if we go back into the moving average dialog box, the other set of options in the moving average dialog box are for the channels. Now, there are two types of channels. There are Bollinger Bands and there are envelopes in ShareScope Gold. Envelopes draw a line above and below the moving average. So there's a perfect replica of the moving average. It's just a given percentage above and a given percentage below. In this case, at the moment, it's set to 10. 10 is quite large, so I'm going to put it down to 5. Turn on my envelopes. Color for my envelope at the moment is red line, but we've already seen that I don't like red interfering with my candles. So I'm going to click on that. Make it the same blue as my moving average, but in this case, I'm going to make it a dotted line. And I'm going to click on OK. So I've got a 5% envelope, which is a dotted line. Click on OK. And it draws like that. So you can see what I've got. So I've got my moving average, and then I've got a line that's 5% above it, but is an exact replica of the moving average. And I've got a line below it, which is 5% below it, but is also, again, an exact replica of the moving average. The other type of channel is the Bollinger Band. So if I use my little moving average button again, rather than envelopes, I use Bollinger Bands. Rather than use a percentage, Bollinger Bands use standard deviations, or a multiple of standard deviations. In this case, it's set to 2.0, and I'm going to leave it on 2.0 for the moment. By using standard deviations, it gives you a measure of volatility. So if we just click on OK, what you'll see is that the Bollinger Bands move apart. When they move apart, that's supposed to be a period of very high volatility, and then they're going to move closer together. And if they move closer together, that's going to be a period of lower volatility. So you can see it sort of tracks along at a sort of a low volatility, and all of a sudden, as the price drops, volatility is getting higher, and the Bollinger Bands are getting further apart. If you want to know about Bollinger Bands, that sort of thing, I would just suggest you go to Google and type Bollinger Band, and you'll see no end of results, and you can learn about them from there. But that's where they are in ShareScope. They're in the moving average dialogue. So a lot of people look at them as if they're indicators, but they're not. They're under the moving average dialogue options. So go back into my moving averages. Just going to untick that. Click on OK. The other thing drawn on my chart, like I said earlier, is my trend line, or my linear regression line, or my line of best fit. At the moment, basically, the trend line, when you first get the program, is set to show the trend of the data you have shown on your chart. So you can quite clearly see here, my chart is trending downwards. If I change share, so I'm just going to press space. That was just going up, just going up. That one's going quite down. Oh, there you go. There's one that's going up. That's what I was looking for. And you have what we call confidence lines above and below the trend line. And confidence line theory basically says that shares bounce off the confidence line. So here you can see it reached the lower confidence line, traveled up, reached the top confidence line, traveled down, hit the bottom one, then bounced off, reached the top one, bounced off, and it's come down. So if you follow confidence line theory, you would say that it's probably going to go back up again, but that's entirely up to you. That's just roughly what confidence line theory says. The trend line options in ShareScope are again on the graph context menu. So if we right click on the chart, just below moving averages, we have trend lines. Go into trend lines, and you can see that the confidence lines are a number of standard deviations. And you can set the color, the dashed lines, and you can see you've got the three options. You've got trend of displayed data, trend of all data, or trend of the last, and in this case it says 60 periods. So if I select for a moment trend of the last and we change the period to 21, which I use to be a trading month. I use 21 trading days in a month, which gives me 252 trading days in a year, and you can divide 252 by 2, you can divide it by 6, you can divide it by 12. It works as a regular number, so I use that 21 periods for trading month. The 21 periods, let's just click on OK, and you can see over the last month the trend of BAE systems has been down. And I think a lot of shares, there you go, BG Group's very down, BHP is very down, market's been very down of late, so you can see I'm getting lots of downtrends. If I want to turn off my trend lines, which I'm going to do, I can either right click and go into trend lines and untick both trend lines and confidence lines to turn them off. Or on my toolbar, you'll see that there is the button just here. It's got a red line on it with dots on it to represent the trend and confidence lines. And it says toggle the trend lines, and I can just click on it and it will turn it off. So now I'd like to go on and look at indicators. Indicators are things like MACD, RSI, stochastic oscillator. But before I do that, you'll see that a large portion of my chart is taken up at the moment by the volume. The volume is down here on my chart, and it's taken up a reasonable amount of my chart. And when I draw an indicator, it will also then draw below my chart and take up more space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the amount of space that the volume is taking up. And I do this by moving my mouse to the black line that separates the chart and the volume. And you'll see my cursor changes to a double-ended arrow. Once it's changed like that, I can hold down the left mouse button. I can move it up if I wanted to, but actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it right down, compress it down so that it's as small as it can get. So it basically gives me more room to play with once I've added my indicator. To add indicators, we can either click on the second button down on our toolbar up here on the top right, and you can see it says indicator, or I can right click on the chart and you'll find add indicator a little way down the menu. And you can see in here I've got options such as the RSI, stochastic oscillator, or what I'm going to add, which is the MACD. So when I select my indicator, I get options for the MACD. So I've got the indicator properties. Now MACD is based on the difference between two moving averages, being the 13 and 26 period exponential moving averages. And it also has a moving average of the line that it draws, which is a 9-period exponential moving average called the signal line. I'm going to leave those untouched. There's no reason to touch those for the moment. The one thing I do want to do is I want to draw a histogram. And as we've already found, I prefer red as a down color. So where it says negative, and I've got this big green block, I can just click on that, select red, click on OK. Click on OK. And there you go, it's drawing my MACD at the bottom of my chart. Now, if that's not clear enough for me, much like I just changed the volume, I can bring my mouse down and I can move my mouse between the volume and the MACD. It's that line at the top there, and you'll see it turns into a double-ended arrow, and I can hold down the left mouse button and I can move the mouse up and make it huge if I wanted to, but that's a bit excessive. So we're just going to move it to about there. Now, if you've never seen a MACD before, basically the way the MACD theory goes is that you have the solid line, which is the MACD line, and you have the dotted line, which is its signal line. And when the solid line crosses the signal line, that could be a buy signal. And when it crosses below the signal line, that could be a sell signal. The great thing about the histogram is that when they cross, the histogram will go from red to green. When they cross down, it'll go from green to red. But it's a very visual clue, and that's why I chose to add the MACD, because it does look nice and visual on the chart. At the moment, we're changing this particular chart. Now, this chart is a template. As you've seen, when I press space, when I change share, it uses the date of that share. So in the case, I've got British Sky Broadcasting, but it shows with the moving averages I've used, it shows with the MACD I've used, the way I've put the volume, the amount of data I've chosen. All of that is based on what we call a setting, which is like a template. Now in ShareScope Gold, you have 12 of these settings. And if you look at the top of the screen, I have a graph settings menu, and you can see setting 1 is ticked, and I can choose any number from 1 to 12. And I can click on any of these and it will change the charts draw in a different way. So setting 2, for example, is quite different. Setting 2, although it still has a MACD on it, it's got a black background, it's got what we call shaded frames, it's got different open, high, low, close bars. Again, it's gone back to showing all of the data. It's just a very, very different template. Setting 4 is quite useful for me because setting 4 shows you how the graph looks if you have 4 indicators applied to your chart. You can add up to a maximum of 4. And rather than me sitting there trying to add 4 now as part of the training, just to show you what it looks like. So there you've got an RSI, what they call an oscillator, the COPOC, and a momentum, all nicely spaced out. And that's what it would look like if you added 4 indicators to your chart. So I'm just going to go back to setting 1, which is what I was on, and back to setting up my chart. Now that I've added my indicator, it's a good time for me to talk about drawing lines on my chart. To draw a line on your chart is a little bit like zooming. When we zoomed, we held down the left mouse button, we selected what we wanted on the chart, and then we released the left mouse button. Drawing a line is the same process, but while we're doing it, we have to hold down the Shift key. The Shift key is the key that's got the up arrow on it, just above Control, on the left-hand side of your keyboard. So I'm going to hold down Shift, hold down my left mouse button where I want to start drawing my line, drag my line out, and then when I let go of the mouse, let go of the Shift key, and it draws a line for me. I'll just do that again. I'm going to hold down Shift, I'm going to hold down my left mouse button, drag out, keeping Shift and the left mouse button held down, drag it all the way out, and I'm going to release the mouse button, then release the Shift key, and it draws my line for me. So that's drawing a line from A to B for me, and it's drawing red lines. I can change the way the line looks and whether the line does things like extends forward and extends backwards. It shows the percentage change on the line, it shows the line values. All that sort of stuff can be changed to what we call color, style, and settings. To access that, the best way to do it is to double left click on the line, like that. The other way to do it is to right click on the line and select it from the menu, color, style, and settings. You see there it says double click beside it. So in color styling settings, I can extend forwards, I can extend backwards, I can show line values, I can show percentage change, I can show date time, I do various things. I'm just going to extend forwards. I'm going to change my line color from red to black. Okay. Now, that will change the line that I've drawn, but it won't change the line I drew prior to that, the bottom line there. If I tick set as default here below the help button, any line I draw going forwards will also extend forwards and will be black. So let's see how that happens. We click on OK, and we can see I've drawn my line. And it's you can just about see it's extended forwards into the future, but if I actually draw another line, you'll see exactly what I mean. So I'm going to come way back to this below here, draw a line diagonally upwards, and you can see as I'm drawing a line, it's extending forwards into the future, wherever I draw it. Okay. I want to delete that line that I've just drawn. I just click on it, and I can either press the delete key on my keyboard, or I can right click and select delete line. So I can click on a line, right click, select delete line. Two other types of line that I can draw are horizontal and vertical lines. Horizontal lines is just hold down shift and left click. So let's say I'm looking at low here. Actually, no, I think that low there is lower. So we'll go here, hold down shift, left click, and draws me a horizontal line at the point where my mouse was. Again, could go to the high if I wanted to, hold down line, left click, oh, double click there, no mistake. And you see that I drew a line at the top there. So shift and left click draws me a horizontal line. If I want to draw a vertical line, I hold down Control and Shift. So let's say I come down to my MACD. I've got this point here where the MACD changes and it's crossing upwards, so I'm going to move my mouse over that, hold down Control, hold down Shift, left click, draws a line. Now the cool thing about vertical lines is they draw through the indicators. So I can marry that up, see where it appears up on the top of the screen, and see what happens after that crosses. It happens the share was already going up and it carries on to going up. Now I've drawn lots of lines on my chart. If I wanted to delete them all at the same time, I can right click on my chart. I can go into lines in text, which is here in the menu. And towards the bottom of the menu, you've got delete all lines and text, which is shift. So in this case, I'm going to say no, because I want to show you something else you can do. If I want to delete a particular line, let's say I want to delete my vertical line that I drew. Normally when I want to delete the line, I click on it, I press delete, and the line's gone. But in this case, if I click on it, it's not selecting it. In fact, because I'm trying to click on it, I've ended up zooming. The reason is that I actually, if I want to click on it, I drew it on the indicator panel, and I'd have to click on the indicator panel to select it. You can see now I've got the box on it, and it's selected. Another way to select it is the tab key. The tab key is above caps lock on the left-hand side of your keyboard. It's got arrows pointing to the left and right on it. And if I press the tab key, you'll see I tab through each of the lines I've drawn. So the diagonal line, the horizontal line, and then you'll see the block appear down here on the vertical line. Once I've selected the line, I can press delete and it'll disappear. I press tab, diagonal line, press tab, horizontal line, press delete, and it goes. One last thing I'd like to show you with lines, because we get asked it quite often, is how to draw a parallel line. To draw a parallel line, once I've drawn the line, which is my first line, I select it, so I click on it. And so I see the boxes, and that's the important bit. It must have been selected first. Once I've selected it, I keep the mouse over the line. I hold down Shift, and I hold down the left mouse button, just as if I was drawing a line. And now you'll see I pull away a diagonal line. And I can just drop that wherever I want to. So just to recap that, I select the line first, move the mouse, keep the mouse over the line, hold down Shift, hold down the left mouse button, keep them down, it'll pull away a parallel line, and I can just take that wherever I want to put it, drop it down. And now again I can press tab, press delete, press tab, press delete, press tab, press delete, and it deletes the lines from my chart. I can draw text on my chart as well. Very similar. If we right click on the chart and we go to lines and text, you'll see the top option is draw a line and the next option down is add text. You'll also see that Alt Enter is the keyboard shortcut if you want to make a note of that. So I'm going to click on that and you'll see my little cursor has now changed to the letter A and I've now got a cross. So let's say I want to type something, so I'm going to click up here. This is the 2014 high. Some random text for you. Click on OK, and there you go. I've drawn text on my chart. Again, much like drawing a line, I can click on it, but with a text box, I get lots of squares, and that's because I can then do things like I can drag the box out if it was a lot more text in there. I can, there you go. If I get the north, south, east, west crosshair, I can actually move it around. And again, if I've got it selected, I can press delete and I can delete it. So if I press Alt Enter, there you go, my cursor changes. I'm going to come down here, put in some text. 14 low, there you go. And I can do other things as well. So if I select the line or I double click on it, I get to edit the text. If I select it and right click on it, then I get the menu and I can do things like edit text, or I can do colors and style. And I can do things like change the font color, make the font bigger. Because the suitable fonts. That'll do. There you go. I've changed the font. I'm not going to change the background color. Click on OK. But now I can't see all of my text, and now I do have to make my text box bigger so I can see it. Again, if I want to delete it, just select it, press delete. A moment ago, you saw me draw a vertical line so I could see where the MACD is crossed. There's another way of doing that with ShareScope, and that's to use the crosshair. If I right click on the chart, you'll see I've got the option, just above the legend option, I've got the crosshair. Click on the crosshair. I've got show crosshair, vertical and horizontal line. And I've got data. I've got data cursor, share analytic value at date, and value at cursor. I'll tip those in a moment and show you what they do. But for the moment, I'm just going to do the vertical and horizontal line. Click on OK. You can see now I've got a crosshair. Just close that. That's just the automatic update process working. But as you saw before, there are some values I can use also with the crosshair. So if we right click again, and go into the crosshair dialog again, I've got date cursor. So that shows me whatever date it is that I am currently pointing towards, wherever my cursor is on the screen. I've got share analytic value at date. Now that tells me either the closing price of my bar or the value of my MACD line, depending on whether the cursor is over the chart or over the indicator. And it shows me at the date that is closest to where my cursor is. And then I have value at cursor. Now value at cursor tells me the value exactly where my cursor is pointing on the screen. If I put my cursor up here, it would tell me the value is about 930. If I put my cursor down here, it would tell me the value is 840. If I put the value here on the MACD screen, it's going to tell me the value is just over 8. On the right hand side, I've got adjust positions, and I can decide where I'm going to put each of these values with respect to the cursor. So value at cursor is actually at the cursor. Share analytic value at date is at the top, and date is at the bottom. So let's just click on OK. Click on OK. And you can see now at the top of the screen, I've got the closing value of my candle. At the bottom of the screen, I've got the date. And wherever I put my cursor, I have the value where my cursor actually is. So if I bring up to the top line there, you can see it's almost 230. If I come onto the MACD, now you're seeing the MACD value. It's the line, the value of the blue line. And you've got the value where my actual cursor is. And you've got the date there as well. That's the crosshair. The crosshair also has toolbar toggle button. The one that looks like a rifle target here. So we can click that, it turns it off. Click that, we can turn it back on again. So we don't have to have it on all the time. We can toggle it on and off. One thing people like to do is they like to add a comparative to their charts. And in ShareScope, we do that via what we call additional graphs. So if I right click on the chart, below graph design in the menu, I've got additional graphs. When I open up the additional graphs menu, I've got an add button. Now I can add 4 different things to my chart in this way. The simplest thing to add would be, for example, the share sector index or the FTSE 100. So let's choose the FTSE 100. It's asking me to choose a color for my line. I'm going to choose, let's choose a pale blue, make it a little bit thicker. Be able to know which color to choose with the moving averages on as well. And then click on OK. So I've got the FTSE 100, and I click on OK. Now with the candlesticks and my moving averages, that becomes a little bit hard to read if you ask me. So I'm just going to click on the close line, just to give myself a closing line on my chart. And I'm going to turn my moving averages off for the moment. So what's happening is that ShareScope's taking the FTSE 100, and it's taking British Sky Broadcasting, and it's looking at their values respectively at the 14th of April 2014. It's calculating the ratio between the two, and then it's replotting the FTSE 100 using that ratio. The FTSE 100 is currently priced around 6,000, so it would plot way off my screen if we didn't do that. And so what we can see is we can see this line, but it doesn't really tell us very much. What we actually need to do is we need to turn one of our axes into a percentage, and then we can read the chart much more effectively. So again, I'm going to go into graph design. So I'm going to right click, go into graph design. And on graph design, I'm going to go to lines and text. Now in lines and text, I can do things like change the spacing of these vertical and horizontal lines. I can change the title text, which is this up there. But I can also change the scale. I've got the left-hand scale and the right-hand scale. And I'm going to change my right-hand scale, and I'm going to change it to a percentage, and I'm going to start at 0%. So see, it's also going to draw a line at 0% for me. I'm going to make that a black line. OK. And click on OK. And now I get a better idea of what's going on. I can see that over this period of time, the FTSE 100 has basically gone down by just over 3%, about 3.1, 3.2%, whereas Blue Sky B over this time has gone up a little bit, by a little bit under, about 3.3 or 0.4%. So it's outperforming FTSE 100. Now if I press space, I can see how various shares are doing. BT Group, as over the last 6 months, has gone up by about 3.3%, I'd say. It'll be under 3.5%. So that's how you draw additional graphs onto your chart. And as I say, you can do up to 4 of them. I'm not going to do any more today, but I will show you how to remove it. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to go into graph design. Sorry, not a graph design, additional graphs. Split the FTSE 100. And I can either click remove or remove all. So I'll click remove. And I'll click on OK. Takes me back where my line was. I can turn my candles back on if I wanted to. I can turn my moving averages back on if I want to. My right-hand scale, again, I have to go in graph design, so just click on the design button, reset my graph design to share price, my scale, sorry, put my graph back where it was. So you've got lots of options to change the graph. There's probably more options there than I've got time to go through today, and I may do another webinar that goes through some of the more advanced options at another time. Right now, what I'm going to do is throw the floor open and ask if anyone's got any questions they want me to have a look at. Oh, no, sorry, wrong button. There we go. So, if you've got a question, if you type it into chat, what I'll do is I'll read out the question and then I'll tell you the answer. ShareScope, so I've asked, a question has been asked by Trevor, and it says saving settings. So you have 12 settings, and when you close ShareScope, ShareScope saves all of the changes that you've made in the program since you opened it. So it will save it in that sense. You can also, if you've made lots of changes in ShareScope, you can go to File and Save just to make sure it's saved. You can also, in the Graph Settings menu, you can also do Save Setting to File. So if you want to, if you've used up all 12 and you set it up, you can go to Save Setting to File, and it saves it as setting1.gra, and then I could go to, say, Graph Setting 12, which looks like this, and I could go to Graph Settings, and I could do Load Setting from File, load the one I've just saved, and rename the new setting, yes, we'll call this 6 months, 1 day, candles, click OK, there we go. I hope that helps. Simon Hedges asked, when drawing a line, sometimes I want a dotted or dashed line and change the thickness, but can't seem to do this. One of the little foibles of ShareScope is you can either have a dashed line or a thick line. You can't have a thick dashed line. That's been on the wish list, I think, probably for as long as I've worked at ShareScope, and that's over 7 years. So maybe one day we'll get the ability to write a thick dashed line, but you can't do it. So you can either have a dashed line or a thick line, not both together. Anyone else got any questions? No, it's sorry. David Howard asked, is it possible to have 2 or more auto trend lines for different periods? Not on the same chart, not in ShareScope Gold. In ShareScope Plus or Pro, you have access to ShareScript, and I have actually written a trend line script which gives you the option to draw more than one trend line on your chart, but you can't do it in ShareScope Gold. You can only have the one trend line option in ShareScope Gold. Okay, Ian has put, if you have the percentage on the left-hand side, it appears to work on percentage from the other state on the graph. That's exactly what the percentage does, whether it's on the left-hand side or the right-hand side. Can you link to purchases to show the gain, or if the graph is on the right, what does it measure from? Doesn't matter whether the left-hand scale or the right-hand scale is changed to percentage. They both rebase from the left-hand side. The point at which the share is on the left-hand side becomes 0 or 100%, depending on which option you've chosen. If you're going to look at purchases, in the portfolios in ShareScope, there is an option to graph value and graph profit. And it will use the same setting as I'm using at the moment. So you could set up a setting, one of your 12 that you've got, set up to show percentage change, set up one of your axes to show percentage change, select your portfolio, right-click on one of the shares in your portfolio. So if I go and do this at the moment, so if I go to select a portfolio, which is the button at the top in the middle, if I just select the example portfolio here and click on OK, now it's only got one transaction in it, so this isn't going to look very good. But if I right-click, I can do the graph value. I can never remember what it is. There's graph value near the top, and it'll graph the value of my portfolio. That's the green line. You can see the value of my portfolio is actually dropping. But in this case, I could buy about 3.5%, 4%. So that's how I would look at the performance of my portfolio. I'd go into the portfolio graph value, and you can look at the chart from there. Does that help? Oh, just to say if I'm in portfolio, if I press escape, it takes me back to the portfolio. I can then, for example, go back to the FTSE 100 by clicking on the FTSE 100 and its button, press enter to go back to the way my chart used to be. Still got my percentage change on the right hand side. So again, just right click, graph design. I'm just going to put it back to share price. Any other questions? And just one, might see if there's any more questions, just to say, what happens is the software we use will email me a link to the video. I now know a little bit more how to get the video so that we can put it on our website. So hopefully tomorrow we'll put it up onto the website in the exact same place. That's the training zone. So you go to help, go to the ShareScope training zone, and underneath my previous webinar, you'll see this webinar as well. So I will also send out a link just to let people know when it's done. You have the dates of the highs and the lows of the graph. No, you cannot. Actually, Ian, I am aware. It happened. Ian's just referencing the loss of sound. It actually tells me in my ear when the sound comes back on, but it doesn't tell me when it's lost. And I asked them about this with the last webinar, and they told me to use Internet Explorer instead of Chrome, which I was using the last time. And I've used Internet Explorer, and it's done exactly the same behavior. So I will have to go back to them again and ask them about it again, because I don't particularly think it's particularly very good. So I will find out, and hopefully the next one I do, will have it fixed. But I need to speak to them to find out what's going on. So yeah, I do apologise again for the little bit that breaks the sound. Hopefully you understood what I was saying and it didn't interfere too much. It would have affected everybody. Anybody else got any further questions? Thank you very much, everyone. If there's anything you actually want me to cover in a webinar, if you email training@sharescope.co.uk with anything you'd like me to cover in a webinar, we can always make a list and I can use it to form what webinars I do in the future. Next month, I'm hoping to do another one in which I'll look at tables in more detail. And then after that, I'm probably going to look at portfolios. I'd like to do another one on charts at some point, but I think that will be in the new year. So, as I say, next month I'm hoping to do one on tables, and then we'll work out from there. But if there's anything you want me to cover, email us, and that'll always give me an idea of what to put in my webinars. We can go from there. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. If you've got any comments, as I say, just email training, and we can go from there.